Welcome to the Compass Conversations podcast, a project of the Intuitive Learning Foundation. Every conversation here is organic. The opening topic isn't settled until 5 minutes before we hit record, and the rest is riffing off of each other's brilliance. Thanks for hanging out with us in a new paradigm of learning, teaching, and expansion where presence and mutually supportive conversation create the space to learn without having to be schooled. Please visit compassconversations.com to discover more about the podcast, or go to intuitivelearningfoundation.org, where we weave intuition with intellect to create harmony. And now, on to the next conversation. And then welcome us all to the next episode of Compass Conversations. And of course, I'm Carrie Lake. Today, I get to be here with Stephanie Revenaugh, Carla Bauchmuller, Susie Cloutier, Matthias Geisen, and Terry Keebler. As always, I'm going to read our invocation and then go right into the amazing place of synthesis that, we were talking about before we hit record. Everybody gets to share what they're curious about, and then that leads us to a starting point for the conversation. So before that, these conversations are shared from our sense of connection, camaraderie, and love. This community of peers is curious to learn from and with one another, living, learning, and leading by example. We're exploring together, acknowledging the interspecies family on this planet, while lovingly including ourselves in the family of life from the heart, for the heart. Which I just love. That makes my heart feel good every time I read it. So as I was listening to the conversation before we actually started the episode, there's a lot. We're all curious about intuition. We're curious about the essence of who we are and our uniqueness. We're curious about the animals, why horses, and why wild animals, why animals. And where that brought me as I was listening to all of us is perhaps to an even more simplified question that seems like it touches, it's a through line to all of that goes very deep to our essence. And the question is, why do I do what I do? Why do I do what I do? Where does it come from? And what on my path is pointing me to that awareness? What is it about my life and my choices and where I go and who I interact with that is perhaps my higher consciousness, the universe, the lessons I need to learn on the planet, but it's all guiding me somewhere. So how do you guys feel about that? What if we start with this exploration of why do I do what I do? What inspires it? Where does it come from? Susie, you're already smiling. So I'm just going to hand the mic to you and let you unpack that smile for us.
Oh my gosh. I just love it. It makes my eyes teary just hearing that. Why do I do what I do? That you'll always hear from me this like collision of the natural environment and the equines and the rest of the animals. I think when you say this, I have like the most vivid thoughts of sitting in nature, sitting with the herd in nature, or just sitting in nature doing my vocation or my recreation, which seem to overlap all the time. Is like these. The most magic thing that I recognize in the natural world and with the equines is just what you had said. They all are so solid and sitting in solid understanding of who they are and what their, I hate to use the word function is, but that's, I know that's a biological term, but what their part is in the universe, be it a lichen or a moss, a bird, a donkey. Um, they hit at this piece in us and in me in particular that has lost that direction, right? And is seeking to find that direction again, that fullness of purpose, that okayness with being exactly who I am. I remember watching, I was out in the field the other day and I was watching dung beetles at work, so here they are rolling turds around, and I'm just near tears because I'm like, what a magical beast to be so fully into its purpose that it's like, yes, I roll turds around for a living, and I eat them, and I'm beautiful about it. Like I'm magic about it. This is it for me. This is what I am. And it just reminds me of all of these, all of our places in this world, and all of our wonderful weirdo-ness. And I'm like, that is so precious to have. Like every little individual thing that we are is perfect, right? It's this, our quirks, our smiles that can't go away, or our pauses. That's all us, and it's all so important in the world.
That's so
Anyway.
beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm with you entirely. And when you're speaking, I feel that I'll use the word essence, right? Activated. I feel the movement in my heart when you're sharing what's so deep in your heart. So thank you for just opening our
Thank
whole
you.
conversation with that amazing beauty. Um, I want to hand it to Matthias for a second because I may, he asked a question just before we hit record for Terry, and I'm like, no, don't answer that. Wait till we hit record. So maybe we can circle back. Are you okay with that, Matthias, to bring that question back forward and give Terry the mic?
For sure, no problem. So I was just very curious about Terry because she was explaining that she was, as a profession or still as a profession, was always working with wild animals to train them. So I was just wondering, like, what's the main lesson that you learned while working with those wild animals? Was there like one main thing that really stood out, or did each animal taught you something different?
Um, that's a beautiful question, and it's been a lifelong seeking for me of answering that question for myself, and because it kept coming from all the animals of the same thing of um, why the animals would always seem to ask for more presence, more of me being me. Why are you uncomfortable with just being you? And the that theme would always run through of just be here, be you, and then magic happens, and life unfolds exactly as you want it to. You by getting more in touch with your own essence, your own frequency or soul song or whatever you want to call it, if you would just bring that into the light of day, magic happens and the world is transformed in whatever way you want it to be. That we're here and everything is here, and it's all just this beautiful dance of just being willing to be. And it's been a lifelong journey of um, taking that from that essence of feels for me and actually finding language for it, of how to support others in what I've been learning from being in nature and from being with the animals. But yes, it's always the same message. It's always that, and do it more, do it deeper, bring more of you into this picture. And that's, what that is your purpose. That's what you're here for, is to contribute that uniqueness to form and build whatever you want life to be.
Beautiful, perfect answer. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That makes me want to go to the other side of the screen now, because I know both Stephanie and Carla brought forward a question that we've visited several times in the history of Compass Conversations, and that is, why horses? Right? So I'm curious now, with Terry sharing, for her, that common message from wild animals, and including horses. How does that land for either of you when you were starting with this question of why horses?
I was just remembering what it was for me when I first came across horses as a 9-year-old, right, and as a kid. And I've always felt more understood by animals than by humans. And I think lots of people probably can, and probably most teenagers can relate, that when you had fight with your parents or with your friends or your siblings, I went to with my animals where when I was small, that were just my guinea pigs that I loved dearly. But I would just be with them, and I felt that they knew what was going on when I was sad or whatever kind of emotion I had. Even with the little guinea pigs, they behave differently. They would be all cuddly, and I just really felt very deeply understood on this really no mind, no word level. And then that also happened when I came across horses, and then horses obviously add the magnificence, the size, the being able to ride them, all of this, where it's a being that's even bigger than you, right? With that little guinea pig, you hold it and you take care of it and all of this, but with the horse, they've got this huge heart center that they have, and all of this. So I felt again like really understood, and I felt like this is what I'm really resonating with, where I felt I'm more a horse than a human, right? Because I have an easier time communicating with them than with humans. And it took me a long time until I learned to love people as much as I love animals. So I think that was a huge learning for me, and also that also shows in what I was teaching. Because when I first started working with horses, it was all about, oh, I wanted to ride horses, I wanted to be with horses, and there were the owners of the horses, right? Like, okay, people want to ride their horses too, so I have to actually start communicating between the owner and the horse and get them all together and teach people how to be better so that the horses would benefit from it. So I started doing this, all kind of focusing on the horses at first and just going, okay, I need to make the people better so that the horses have a better life, until it started shifting towards, okay, I actually want to help the people too. I can see that they start changing, that something in their lives change, and they are grateful, and my connection to them is different, right? Not and their connection to other people changes and all of this. And so I needed to learn this, and now and through the 30 years of doing this, my my career, my work has really changed from being completely focused on the horses to more and more focusing on healing the person, like really also like physical healing, emotional healing, all of this, where it becomes more of about the people, and the horses actually go a little bit into the background. They're still a big part of it, but they are not at the forefront the way they used to be.
I'm so curious I feel like I'm right at that transition point where, since I'm asking these questions, these deeper questions over the last few years, where the horses are connecting me back to people. I'm just like at the cusp of that, right? So I would love to hear from you, Carla, any more about what were the specific things that shifted that perspective from horses to people, or what did you see shifting in the people that made that interesting, their healing interesting, or what did you see healing? All of that. I'm fascinated by that. I'm asking those questions of myself right now, in my work, and asking questions of my work, and that question about why horses, and how do I explain to people what I'm even doing if I don't even know what I'm doing. I have two minds of this for this question. Like, I go back to Susie talking about the dung beetles, and they're just like going about their business beautifully. I'm like, do I have to have a lot of words about it, or is it like there is magic in what I just do, just coming back to the essence of what I do, but then there's still this pull to go deeper and to understand deeper, so that I can share more. So yeah, I'm in that, like, the tension between those two things, and I feel like I'm wanting to share more because I'm at that cusp of what am I learning that could maybe be beneficial to others. I'm having more of an interest in other people, and as I've healed my own wounds, I'm not as, like, avoidant of people. I'm wanting to lean in instead of just lean towards the animals, where you were saying that you feel like you can communicate, Carla, like when you were more horse than person. Like, I feel that it's easier with animals because there's less judgment, and there's less needing for words around what we're feeling, or it's more the intuition, right? So that might sound circular and muddled because I'm in this, like, tension between these two thoughts.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
So, one thing that I love, and as being a wildlife biologist for years, my job was to observe animals and their behavior. And languageless, when I say that, languageless communication is so magnificent. And that's what that's what the animal world offers. And sure, there's, whinnies and snorts and things that are, outward audible language, but this languageless communication is really so precious because it requires a couple of things. It requires us to get quiet enough so that we hear the language in our hearts. So as a scientist, I was taught to hear the language of the animal, the squirrel, approached the tree and went vertically on it, right? So just to be very statement oriented. And when I'm paying attention to the squirrel, and the real languageless communication, it is universal, and it speaks to your heart. It's not just an activity, an action, a replicable piece of science. And I think that's where we can struggle as human beings, because we have developed this verbal language and it is very limited. So it has been my experience that the more I shut up and listen and sit with and understand that languageless communication that's coming, then it resonates in such a full, giant way, on an energetic level, that you do want to turn around and translate that with this to humans who may not see through that lens yet. And because it's right, because you feel enlightened and empowered, and there's so much important stuff to this changes you, right? And there's so much important stuff that's coming out of this languageless space. So I get that's a beautiful transition to be in. It's a beautiful place to be, where I'm like, I am now quieting myself enough so that I can listen to the lack, to this communication. And now I'm hearing so much magnificence that I feel a need to translate that to the rest of the people, so that perhaps they can quiet and listen and hear. And, that's how we all get energetically lifted in the world, right? Like, they're teaching us, we're not teaching them.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that a little bit also of that is because you said you're in transition, and that seems to be the arc of the transition is the realization that um, as people, we feel or believe that we're separate entities, and we get really out of balance and out of sync, being totally in the left brain of the thinking and the language of the only way that I have to connect with others is through this verbal, language that we have, and the animals keep pointing us back to the essence of energetic connections, that we're all, constantly swimming in each other's fields and frequencies, and it becomes an awareness of the power of nonverbal communication and connection, and it becomes an entire deep dive into really feeling a part of and whole again, and then realizing the health benefits of that to people, to feel part of this world again, and to feel balanced again. And we've gotten so one-sided and out of balance that it really is a journey back to balance and to feeling healthy. And in just being that ourselves, it actually allows other people to resonate with it as well.
I think the self-exploration, that's because Stephanie were asking about, what's the turning point there as well. For me, it was definitely also, as you had shared earlier, the moment I started exploring myself more, like really looking at who or what am I as a human. And then also like 20 years ago, I had participated in my first regression workshop. And that went really deep, like really looking at all the like traumas and everything, and like really peeling it back and looking inside, and seeing more about who I am and also what there is to explore. And I think that started the fascination about exploring myself. And I was like, okay, I'm a human with all these different facets. I'm not just a good person or a bad person. I'm all of this. And then, oh, how about looking at other humans the same way? So I'm not just going like, ugh, you all suck, leave me alone. But then, like, let me be around my animals and I'm fine, right? Don't need anybody. But more looking like, oh, wow, there is, even in a person that doesn't look like I would be resonating with them, and then suddenly finding out that we are actually on a certain level totally resonating, and then finding, I think there was like a curiosity, not just about myself, but also about humans. When I was like, okay, humans are actually quite fascinating. And there's also something about humans that animals cannot provide for us. As much as we always say, wow, animals kind of special and horses, etc., and like, the levels there that they are swinging, the frequencies that are swinging on, etc. But we must also not forget that there is something about the human condition that is special, and us connecting to human. And animals cannot really replace that. Yes, it feels like they do, but we need other humans. That's our species. That's our way of really connecting and understanding that, opening to others, like really seeing, letting myself be seen, seeing them, really connecting on that level, that became very satisfying. And I had not had that prior to that. Like communication with humans was okay, but it was not satisfying on this really deep level.
Yeah, I had that same conversation of when I was training animals, because that it was very satisfying to be in the film industry, because I didn't have to deal with owners with their animals. I was just dealing with the animals, and that was terrific. And then people would come to me with their problem, dogs or horses or whatever, and I would be trying to explain to them, this isn't a bad dog. This isn't a problem horse. It just has behaviors that you're not liking. And I thought at that time, I would hear myself explaining that to the people and go, gosh, I wish I could view humans like that. And that was what the animals kept pointing me back to, is that's what we're trying to show you, is that there are no bad people. There's just, it was the same lessons of take what you are offering to the animals and offer it to others. But then it went even deeper of, what if you were to offer that to yourself as well? Because that's the real difficulty, and the real journey is the ability to do the self dive, the deep work of, wow, I'm really, really critical of myself, and I'm really hard on myself, and what if I could just make some other choices and evolve that way. So it went from animals were easy to, let's take it to people aren't as easy, but what if they were? And then really going into the deep dive of, what if I could be with myself the way I am with animals?
Do you think that that's levels of ease? Like, we can look out at a different species and see, like, it's the animal is just, again, let's bring it down to communication. It's communicating with you that this is hard for it, or this is not easy. And we settle into that, we expand to that, right? We're like, oh, so this is not a bad dog or a bad horse. They're communicating and they're feeling a way, and they need us to help them with that, right? To help understand that. And then we go to people, which is also maybe a little bit easier than going, it's all a lot easier than going here, right? And then you can start to see those people as like, well, they're having behaviors that are, they're wonderful beings, but they're having behaviors that are reflective of their life, or their upbringing or whatever. And how can I see them through a loving eye? And then we're the hardest ones, right? Then we go to us and we're like, you're irredeemable and a rat.
Well, that's it. Exactly. You said, can I see them through a loving eye? And it comes down to love. And that is the language of can I see the world through love? And it's for all of us, it's easy with animals because we love animals, so animals are easy. And we try to transfer that love to other people of, look, I love this dog. This is a great dog, or this is a great horse. And then we learn to love people because we're starting to see them through that same vision of love, of this is not a bad person. And then it comes to self-love. So it's simply, and I know Carrie would just like, you go ding 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 ding, you got it. It's love. It's can I communicate with love?
I want to make a little space for Matthias here, because I know, Matthias, your work is very much about the depth. And I know what I do know about your journey and your work is that's been your focus, is knowing yourself to such a degree that there is no disharmony to share with the horses or with the animals or with people. So I just want to make a little space for you here and see if there's something you want to bring into the conversation, since we're at the depth now.
Okay. So me personally, I can just say I really, really love human beings. I really do love them in every way possible. So that's also the reason why that I do what I do, to answer a bit the first question. I also think that we're very lucky to be human beings. So that's a very good point that some people today also mentioned, that we always compare ourselves with the animals, and we're lucky to be in their presence, and we're lucky to be around horses, and they're much more in tune with themselves and all those things. Personally, I do think we are the last creation of our existence. So the potential of a human being is huge, we are not there. That's something I completely agree on. But it's huge, our potential. I mean, we are human beings, so it means like we, in my perspective at least, if I want to, I have the possibility to adapt myself to the energy of a horse. If I want, I can become a cat, I can become a dog, I can become a bunny. I'm, I'm literally everything. That's the power of a human being. A horse is a horse, a cat is a cat, a dog is a dog. They don't have the potential to change their energy to another living being. Of course, they're all going to be in tune with each other, and for sure, they're all going to be, we all come from the same source. But once again, the potential of a human being is really huge. I think we don't even live, what, 5% of our potential probably. So I also do think, I mean, now we speak about communicating with the animals and all those things, but I think it's always very interesting. I mean, one of the main things that obviously is making us separate of all the other human living beings is just the voice, like you guys were saying before. So try to imagine if your dog, your pet, or your horse would be able to speak, would you still have the same relationship with them? It's going to be much more complicated because they will explain you, okay, today I'm not feeling well, and you will wonder a question, why aren't I feeling well? Why don't you feel well? And it will become in your mind and start communicating, and then it's all messed up. The reason why it's going the way it goes because they are quiet. Very simple. And this is for us good. It makes our mind goes calm and it makes everything goes much more simple. But if they would have a voice, I'm 100% sure the relationship would not be the same, not even close.
I have so many thoughts right now. Thank you. One of the places my mind is going, and I love that you brought up that our capacity to shift our energy. And this is where I think the word resonate is really appropriate. That when, just like tuning forks, here's a horse tuning fork, and I could be a human over here with a human frequency, which is different than a horse tuning fork, but I can, as a human, come into harmonance and resonance with a horse's tuning fork. So that's what I hear you talking about, Matthias, when you're saying I can become a cat, I can become a dog, because I know exactly what you're talking about. It's how I learned as a child to relate to anything, was shifting my energy to be where they were. And of course, I had no language for it as a little one. So it was very fluid to just tune into where Patty, our dog, was and join him in those frequencies. And it's like, tuning your radio, and all of a sudden there's all this information available because you are resonant right in that spot at that time. I have people I've spoken to recently who haven't had the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations as much. And one woman I'm thinking of in particular, she's like, no, Carrie, you don't understand. I was a horse when I was a kid. I was a horse. I'm like, yes, I understand. I understand totally. And so, I think many of us have had that. What I love about sharing these conversations is it brings our awareness to what I think Matthias is talking about, what I hear you talking about, which is the flexibility and the amazingness of being human, right? Mm-hmm. And when we start to get some tools, it starts with awareness and then some curiosity and then maybe some tools and more experience to discover this capacity to harmonize or resonate, to shift ourselves and join others where they are, right? It opens up countless universes. And, in the horse world, there's the whole join up idea, which opened so many people's eyes. But I often ask people to sort of contemplate, is there a difference? What might the difference be between having your horse join up with you or you joining your horse? What would that change? Who am I if I allow myself to join others where they are? And yeah, with animals, I think feels right out of the bucket safer because we can also feel each other as humans, and we can feel each other's conflicts. And it's not necessarily pleasant to resonate with a person fully right where they are, because it's uncomfortable. It can be profoundly uncomfortable. And most of us still have a really itchy relationship with discomfort. Or is it just me? I mean, was it just me that had to learn how to be friends with discomfort, or anybody else too?
Not just you.
No? No?
I love what you just said about like joining up with your horse versus your horse joining up with you. And I've watched so many, join ups, and I think it's interesting because when we're given the task of like go join up with your horse, it starts out transactional. It feels like, sometimes when you're given the edict, go join up with your horse, and it's hard to get out of that space. And when you or have your horse join up with you, pardon me, and then when you choose to join up with your horse, you can have no transaction in that. You are literally just trying to find that space between you that ties you. Period. Like the horse is not going to now ask you something to do something afterwards because you've achieved the check mark, right? I love that. I just love that. It's such a cool way to look at it.
Well, thank you. I wanted to hand it back to Matthias again, because I know you like to take people out with the horses in their natural, as natural habitat as possible. So I just would love to hear your thoughts on that nuance of difference in connection.
For me, I mean, what we very often try to do is if you're gonna work with horses, or if we try to connect with animals, or we always try to, obviously, I think horses can teach us many things. I mean, horses can try to, they show us softness. Horses bring us into balance in between the masculine and the mind. They can teach us how to be the masculine and feminine, sorry, in between the mind and the emotions. They can teach us many things. But I also do think if you really want to improve the connection with your horse, you have to see it from a bigger perspective. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that horse people have today, in my opinion, horse people, they focus too much only just on horses. So if you see horses are only just a little top of the finger, and they see this in a whole world in its complete existence. For me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So what I try to do, I try to focus on life. I try to understand the whole body. If I'm able to understand the whole body, connecting with horses becomes a logical evidence. I mean, it's only just a little top of the finger. So it's not that complicated. To be honest, everything can be very, very, very simple. But we are so far removed from our own being that it becomes huge. It's really complicated to go back to the simplicity. So I mean, yeah, then you can really go speak for hours. I just would like to share also one thing about what Terry was saying with the working with the animals. I do think one of the biggest things that we have to learn again is to dare to be authentic. It's huge. I mean, like really, that's so important. If you're able to just dare to be yourself in a group of people, that's the biggest power we can ever have. But we are so afraid to do this because we're afraid of being just judged and criticized and all those things. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense at all, not even close. And so, I mean, that's really, if I would like to share something with people, is really try to be yourself. And if people judge you, I mean, if, in my opinion, people who really go through a lot of difficulties in life, a lot of struggles, and they do the best they can to be the best person in their way of being. Those people, they will never judge you. There is no single way that they will ever have this, the even think about, oh, that's gonna be, that person is struggling. Why? Because we went through the same thing. The only thing that will come up in your mind is say, hey, listen, I've been through the same thing. Maybe if you do this, maybe you can get out of this problem. People who judge you, that's not your problem, that's their problem. Maybe they're just jealous, or they're gonna be, I mean, it can be hundreds of reasons. So I hope this is something that really helps people. If I can only just say, I try to be the best person I can. And if people judge me for this, please, I couldn't care less. If I'm in a group with people and I'm trying to be open and try to learn and people judge me for this, I mean, it doesn't make sense at all in my opinion. So by understanding this, I dare to be more unique. I dare to be more loving. I dare to be more closer to myself. And the good thing about this is if you're able to do this, if you have the confidence to dare to be more unique, this affects the whole group. Every person will resonate with this. Every person, it's a desire of every person. It's like, whoa, maybe some people will criticize once again because they're jealous, but deep inside we all know. So I think that's beautiful. Why, once again, to what Terry was saying, that the wild animals were teaching her this. There is a reason, once again, why people are unique. Imagine if everybody would completely the same. I think life goes beyond perfection. It goes beyond perfection. We have no idea whatsoever. So there is a reason why there are man and woman. There is a reason why we're attracted by each other. Is to learn to grow. I mean, it goes beyond perfection. And one more thing I would like to share with this. Very often we think that life is, if we go through a difficult moment, we think like, oh, life is working against us. Another obstacle, another difficulty, another. Personally, I don't agree with this. Life is always working in our favor. Every second of the day, life is working in our favor. Every obstacle we come across is necessary. It maybe sucks, it may be difficult, maybe it's annoying, but it's necessary to get closer to our essence. The moment we understand this, life becomes much more, in my opinion, simpler. Or at least we have more understanding why these things happen. So I think, once again, if I can share one thing today, life is beautiful. It goes
Life is
beyond perfection.
beautiful. Yes.
People are beautiful, animals are beautiful. It's all beyond perfection. That's really just the biggest message I would like to share.
So what do you think, Stephanie? Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
I'm
Terry.
sorry, I don't mean to, but I want to, because see, and that's why these conversations are so valuable, because the conversation now has taken me full circle and deeper into my response of what the animals were teaching me was not, the journey was how to be authentic. What the message really was how to reconnect to source. And we're kind of using the word essence here as source energy or God or whatever you want to call it, but we're calling it essence. But it's the horses were teaching me how to connect to source energy. And Carrie knows, because we took this journey together of then other animals started to come through saying the horses have fulfilled their soul contracts of raising human consciousness, where people are starting to be interested in this and raise their consciousness to a level where other animals are now willing to start to come in and teach, in different ways. And so when you were talking about the vibrations and resonating to different vibrations, it's so interesting because lately I've been channeling from an octopus. And the octopus was saying about being able to shapeshift and teaching about being able to change your frequencies to with ease of just being able to change your color, change your shape. And he was saying, too bad you guys have bones. It makes it a little more difficult. So I don't believe it's just people that have the ability to change their frequencies. I think animals can too. I think we are all connected to source energy and able to resonate with that frequency in itself. And so that's the lesson that's been coming through for me, of really how to reconnect to source energy and create through my uniqueness of that frequency. So thank you. This is just so valuable and amazing. these conversations.
Thank you, Terry. Where it just is taking me is this question of then where is this space where humans can find each other without all of the dissonance and harmony? Is it possible for us to truly connect uniqueness to uniqueness, even while there's, mental shenanigans and disharmonies and all of that going on, right? That to me, that's a worthy question. What do you guys think?
Can I say one more thing
Yeah.
about, and then I will let everybody else speak. So what I also personally do think, what we very often do, I mean, we all know that we're part of this world, obviously. But at the same time, when we say, "Hey, listen, I'm part of the world. I'm part of this existence," at the same time, you already disconnect yourself from the existence, in my opinion.
Mm.
So recently, I mean, for sure, many people will think the same way about it, but I do think we always go in different type of depths. So recently, I had like a kind of a beautiful experience that I start realizing. I mean, like literally, there is no difference. I mean, how to explain this in a proper way? This is something I didn't do very often before, so I have to find my words. But how I see now my existence is like I am at this moment living in my own body in a certain way. Okay, so if I have a conversation with a person and I have a difficulty with that person, or she triggers me in a certain kind of way, this means that this is a part of my existence that I didn't solve yet. So it means like every conversation that I will go through in daily life is teaching me something about myself. What is my blockage in that moment? I also do think that life is in such kind of a way created. If you would still have true nature, it is literally a representation of our body. It's like reading a book. You can see how is everything connected with each other, and if you're able to unravel this, you can learn so much about our own existence. It can be really huge. So I try to give you one little example. If we have a difficulty, for instance, we have a difficult moment during the day, sometimes it can be helpful to take a very cold shower. Or if you're very lucky, maybe you can go to the river or in the ocean. The moment you get out of this shower or water, you just feel like, hey, it's all washed away. You know, like a horse, what they will do, they will go and roll in dirt, so also leave all the tensions in the ground. Now, if you look at nature, what's the feeling on a summer day or even during winter when there is a lot of rain that came? When the clouds go away, how does it feel?
Mm.
Similar. It's fresh. It's like a new beginning. A lot of oxygen. It's like a, see, so it's the exact same thing. So if we really understand this kind of way of seeing life, there is no difference in between us. For sure, we're all unique and we all have our own perspective, but the origin is the exact same thing. So if literally try if you're able to keep this focus when you walk in the street, try to maintain this perspective. It's all a reflection of yourself. You're identically. When you have a conversation, you have a difficulty. Okay, why am I triggered by this? What's the blockage in my own body? So that's also just something I would love to share.
That's amazing. I love it. Thank you. And I do want to go reflect back to Stephanie because you were so courageous to share that you're at this flux point. So I'm just curious how you're feeling through this conversation. What's bubbling up in you?
Yeah, I definitely, what I'm hearing is just a reflection of the process that I've been through. And you start having that awareness, you start asking these questions, why this, why that, and you're like looking out, and if you keep pursuing that, it comes back in, and it comes down to know thyself. And as you know yourself, and there's so many ways we learn to know ourselves, right? And for me, one of the biggest one has been like looking out and seeing everything as a reflection of me. What triggers me? What is that in me? That's the distortion that I'm perceiving that how I'm perceiving something is like distorted, right? And as I've learned more about myself and found the places where I could like correct those perceptions, the stuff that's not me falls away, so that essence of who I am, that particular like frequency that of that source that I am transmitting, I guess, or that's coming through this particular being, can be shining brighter, right? So as I know myself, as I then heal myself, then that comes back out, and then so that's kind of what I'm seeing from this whole conversation is like the questions and the out, and then it goes back in and comes back out again, more bright, more healed, more of my own essence. That's what I'm getting, to try to synthesize everything that everybody's saying.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. We've got about 8 minutes left before we reach our hour. Just it always gets good as we get to the end. But I want to come back to Carla because I know you have another practice. You have a meditation practice as well, right? So you have more than one way that at least as I understand, that you're exploring. Can you just speak to what's similar maybe between a meditation practice and then the work with the horses and then the people? Or am I totally off base here? But that was what I was getting curious about listening to Matthias and Stephanie. It's because I happen to know you have a meditation practice.
Yeah, I do. And it's I've started 20 years ago actually with a regression workshop that I mentioned, because my meditation teacher always said, in order to really get to that place of stillness that you want to achieve through meditation, you have to clear up the other stuff before, right? And there's actually a word for it. It's called samskaras. That's the kind of the emotional scars that Matthias was talking about. Where you have all these little emotional scars, and they are triggered by other people when you don't have a vision and understanding of what's happening inside of you. So you light up like a Christmas tree when when you meet certain people. And the more you explore yourself, the quieter this whole landscape becomes. And that's really required when you want to go into a meaningful meditation. And I'm not talking about like 5 minutes in the morning, which is a nice thing to do. But when you really go into like long-term meditations, which is maybe like 2, 3, 4 weeks of silence, then all that stuff will start bubbling up, right? Because then you're sitting with yourself, not speaking. Yes, you have other people around you, but you're not speaking. You're not spreading energy out, and you're just with yourself, and then you better like what you're seeing, because that's all you have. You just have yourself and your own emotions, and if you have not had a look at all these things and kind of dealt with it, they will really start bubbling up, and that will keep you from meditating, which I think is so interesting when we're talking about like essence and source and all of this in that context, because that's basically what meditation also wants to do, right? It wants to take you away from like being everywhere to coming back to that quiet center, to the essence, experiencing that without all the other things that we've put on top of it or around it. So I think, yes, meditation is definitely the proof, I'd say. Like the proof is in the pudding and meditation is the pudding, right? So that is when you're really able to sit for an extended period of time, that then you have to have had a good look at yourself and be able to stay calm with what you're seeing.
Wow.
Highly recommended, by the way. Like meditation. It's challenging, but it's really fun. Yeah.
Wow. What a beautiful conversation. I know we started with the question, why do we do what we do? And there's kind of a through line through all of this that I'm hearing when we're talking about it in lots of different ways. And that's what we're saying is essence or source, right? What does it take to have a relationship for the mind, the thinker, the personality, to have a relationship with that source to the degree that it's not only, interesting to have that relationship, but it's also generative, creative, loving, friendly, effortless, and to me, that's the word I have for that is love. That it's the space within which all of this other stuff happens. It's the space where no words are necessary because we can all feel each other, where if there is a ripple, it's obvious. And, often, like I feel Matthias pointing to, and all the joy when you're sharing it's comical, how complicated we make things. And when you get to this point where you can see things for what they are a little bit more clearly, then even when it's hard or really uncomfortable or difficult, it's kind of always a little bit funny how seriously we take ourselves, So for me, I know that anytime I explore this, I always come back to why do I do what I do? To experience my wholeness, to experience love, to have the experience of my own essence, even for a fleeting moment. Because I know the more I have those fleeting moments, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's a 1 + 1 is, 11 or more. And that's the joy for me. And that's the joy for me in these conversations as well, because I get to sit here and look and listen to all of you through the eyes of my heart and feel each of your essences and be curious. And, that for me is what has always helped me heal. And that's what horses gave to me from the very beginning. So I want to just leave a little space. Does anybody have any final words, anything you want to share at the end? Any final synthesis in your own words?
I feel like we just brought it all back home, back to the first piece of this conversation, which is, why do you do what you do? Well, so that I can be reflected, the greater of myself can be reflected upon the world, and the world can reflect upon the greatest of myself, which is just a beautiful thing. And I love, we've had 3 of these conversations together, and I love that they all get wrapped up with the most magnificent golden thread at the end, like, yeah, we are all one and we are all each other. So keep doing the work.
Yeah,
Thank
I would also like to thank, I would like to thank Carrie for bringing us together. I think it's very beautiful what you're doing, not trying to do what you're doing, sorry, for what you're doing. I think it's very nice that these things can keep continuing to bring people together, share knowledge. So I would just like to thank you for this.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy you were able to be with us today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for including me. It's such an honor to be here and to get to know a little bit about each one of you. It's opened a whole new world for me. So thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. And thank you for stepping right in with a total vulnerability and an honesty and a genuineness. Like, thank you for opening that space and sharing that part of yourself here, because it's a huge contribution to this conversation. Thank you so much. Beautiful. Well, lots of love to everybody. Thank you guys so very much.